Persistent Rumor presents Chocolate Yoddah Live.
Hi folks, this is Chocolate Yoddah, spelled Y-O-D-D-A-H because film studios are litigious, and this is Chocolate Yoddah Live. I am simulcasting on the Wisdom app as well, and for you folks listening on Wisdom, you're probably hearing some background noise. That's my air conditioner. I apologize for that. I have not found a way to get an audio interface to work with my microphone and the Wisdom app. It's probably an Android thing, but hey, such is life. But so forgive the background noise, but here I am in all my glory. Today is Monday, June 12th, 2023, and I want to talk about the persistent rumor of privilege. Now, before I launch into that, I just want to make it clear that very often when people talk about privilege, it's all about white people, but that's not what this is about. And I'll give you some examples of what I mean by privilege. So if you live in a first world country, you're already privileged. And I do. Pardon me. Most of us, if you're listening to this, chances are you're in a first world country, and that carries with it some privilege. For instance, in my case, I get to sleep indoors, I get to eat every day, and I have fresh water coming out of my sink. Fresh drinkable water. And I'm so fancy that I filter it for the extra first world experience. And I'll give you some other examples. Before I started the podcast, I wanted to bring my blood sugar up a smidge. So I think that might be the first time I've ever used the word smidge. But I had one piece of dry wheat toast, and I didn't have any fruit with it. Normally I do enjoy fruit and wheat. Sorry, that's an inside joke between my friend Scotty and me. Scotty, what's up? Hope everything is good. Matter of fact, Scott is the first person who I married as a wedding officiant. I flew out to California and performed his wedding. It was spectacular. We've been friends for quite some time, I think around 30 plus years. So anyway, so I had some dry wheat toast, and I toasted an end, right? And I know some people throw out the ends of bread, which I think is criminal, quite frankly. I don't like throwing out food. I don't believe in it. I think to even have the choice, the option to throw out food, chances are you're living a very first world life, right? Things like if you say, I don't like this kind of food, I prefer this kind of food, that's probably an indication that you're living in a first world life. And within a first world life, obviously different types of people have different types of privilege. And is there some privilege associated with being white? Or as I should say, white? Yes, of course there is. And it doesn't make people bad if they have privilege just for being white. It just means you were born into the ruling class in America. All right? And I also want to talk about what privilege is not. It is not a winning lottery ticket. I've heard so many people, and some people have even responded to my talks on privilege in the past by saying, well, you know, I have no privilege because I've struggled through my life. That's a wrong idea of what privilege is. It suggests, and I understand it, like, you know, the word kind of carries with it this potential for understanding that, oh, if you're privileged, that means everything comes easy or you just automatically have everything. No, that's not what privilege is exclusively. Sometimes privilege is what you don't experience. And my best example for that I can think of is getting pulled over by a police officer. Now, if you are white, chances are, and this is feedback that I've gotten, so take it for what it's worth. This is anecdotal, but this is what people have told me. I've asked people, what'd you think when you got pulled over? When you heard the siren or saw the lights and knew that you were getting pulled over, what happened to you? Well, people say, well, I got annoyed because I was now going to be late. I get that. That makes sense. And some people said, oh, I got a little nervous because I didn't want my insurance rates to go up by getting points on my license. I get that. And those are the two main answers. Some people made comments about, well, I don't like police and blah, 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 which, I understand that perspective. I don't adhere to it. I respect police immensely. A police officer saved my life when I was 6 years old, but that's a story for another time. But what I never heard any white person say when they got pulled over by a car was, I was afraid that this was going to be the end of my life, that these were the last moments of my life. Never heard a white person say that, not once, in all the times that I've asked and all the times that I've heard this conversation. But I know for me and for black and brown people in America, that's a real possibility. We actually have to have certain training, right? We have to act cooperative. We have to put our hands on the steering wheel where the officer can see them. And we have the unenviable task of teaching that to our children as well. Did you ever have to teach that to your child? The playbook for how to not get murdered by the police when you're pulled over or when you encounter police on the street? Probably not. And if you didn't, that's a privilege. And again, this doesn't make you a bad person. You had no control over what race you were born into and into what country and into what circumstances. And are there white people who don't have privileged lives? Yes, but they still have more privilege than black and brown people. Easy for me to say. So, recognizing your privilege, like I started off doing, like I understand my privilege as someone who lives in a first world country, right? I think that's important to understand that. Understand that there are laws that work against some groups and for other groups. Understand that there's a system, like the legal system, like there's very clear statistics about this. A black person is 250% more likely to get murdered by a police officer than a white person. Now, that doesn't mean white people don't get killed by the police, obviously, because it's 250% more, which means it happens to white people as well. All right? But understand that that's still a sign of privilege. The statistics about prison time and prison sentences for the same crime, it's all very clear. It's all very clear. And so this leads me to something that I wrote on Facebook about racism, and I'm going to go ahead and read it because there's no way I was going to memorize all of this. Pardon me again. So, I don't remember what I called this, but here we go. Air is necessary for human life. It's all around, but we don't notice it. When we breathe in, our bodies use oxygen to feed every part of us. Cellular metabolism is the result, and that process is what produces carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide can't harm you in small doses, but can kill you above a 10% concentration. That's why people die in small spaces that are airtight. Racism in America is like air. It's all around, but people don't always notice it, especially if you're a person who has the privilege of never having to experience it for no other reason than having less pigment in your skin. I don't think the majority of Americans are racist, but it's all around. Excuse me. But it's all around them, and it gets into them like air does. That's why someone who has never held an overly racist belief can reply to Black Lives Matter with All Lives Matter and never understand where that reaction sprang from. After a lifetime of inhaling racism, eventually the toxin comes out after being metabolized. I'm glad that many white people are reading my posts and letting me know that their perspective has been changed by mine. Though I don't take it upon myself to educate anyone, I appreciate that feedback. However, I caution you all not to be satisfied with mere knowledge. Knowledge is not power. Knowledge is only potential power. How you apply it determines whether or not your knowledge is powerful. My hope is that you become a carrier and infect others. To me, that's the best way to go viral. This has been a public service announcement. Feel free to roam about the planet. So that's my idea on privilege. You know, again, I want to emphasize that if you have the luxury of experiencing privilege or being privileged just by the mere circumstance of your birth, there's nothing about that inherently makes you a bad person. It just is what it is. And I would encourage you to dig deep and look at that. See where you are privileged, just like I'm willing to see where I'm privileged. I know where I'm not privileged, but I also know where I am privileged. And that helps me. That helps me have a balanced perspective of my life and of things around me. You know, there is systemic racism in America. You know, things like the 13th Amendment. That's a law that's still on the books. In the first paragraph, it explicitly states that slavery is illegal unless you're a prisoner. And if you're a prisoner, then you can be treated as a slave. And the overwhelming prison population is not white folks. It's black and brown people. And that's already backwards. How can you have black and brown people be such a small percentage of the overall population and still be such an overwhelming percentage of the prison population? So, you know, these are things to think about, you know, and that's what I hope this podcast does. Just gives you food for thought. I don't think I'm a genius. I'll repeat this over and over again. I am no more than a talking monkey, and I say that with all due deference and respect to monkeys. I like them. I think they're amazing. And I think I'm less amazing than they are. I can just talk and they can't. Big deal. But anyway, that's it for now. This has been The Persistent Rumor, Chocolate Yoddah Live. Peace, love, and granola. Talk to you soon.